Thank you, thank you. Yeah, borderline schizophrenic, I guess, if we talked about like 20 things in 5 minutes, but that sounds about right. Thank you guys for coming. I know it's the last day, long conference week, and the weather is actually good, so the fact that you actually are here on a Friday means a lot, so thank you very much for indulging me here. I'm going to be talking about sort of we're going to split up the presentation into two things. One is how to become an intrapreneur, and the second is more around if you are a manager or director, whatever, VP in an organization, how you sort of foster that kind of culture and put the programs and things in place to sort of let that thrive, right? So how do I equip my intrapreneurs to be as successful as possible? So kind of split it up into two parts. Before I begin though, I was thinking a little bit about yesterday's session. We did the executive panel, and I don't know about you guys, but I really loved the Q&A part. So I'll just do a quick show of hands because I'm very agile. I can adapt on the fly here. So there's two things. We could go deeper on the content on the slides if you want me to, or I'm happy to take more questions if you guys also like the Q&A kind of stuff where I can dive deeper on a specific topic as opposed to being a little bit more general in the slides. So for those of you who maybe would like to do more Q&A, can I just see a quick show of hands? Raise them high so I can just kind of gauge the room here. Okay, more on the content on the slides, raise your hands. Okay, content on the slides it is. Okay, cool, so then let's go ahead and get going here. This has been a long journey for Cisco. For those of you guys who don't know, Cisco's a pretty big company. We have 70,000 employees. We operate in over 150 different countries. We're a massive company. We do $50 billion a year in revenue. It is, to change a culture and to move it in a more entrepreneurial way is very difficult. And I wouldn't say that we've done it without a bunch of battle scars. We've failed at a lot of things. 5 years ago, I'm just going to read these because I couldn't remember all the numbers. We were 31st on BCG's most innovative companies. Now we're number 17. We were 67th on Fortune magazine's best places to work. Now we're number 6. We were 12th on great places to work. Now we're number 1. And last year, for innovationleader.com, we won their Business Impact Award for innovation. So we've come a long, long way in 5 years. But it has not been necessarily easy. I won't talk about all the trials and tribulations of everything that we failed at, but I definitely will touch on a couple points. But I just wanted to kind of let you know and tell you the whole story. It's been a journey for us. So as it relates to sort of being an intrapreneur, show of hands real quick. Anybody not familiar with what an intrapreneur is? Okay, there's some of you. Okay. Effectively, it's this, right? And if you know what an entrepreneur is, an intrapreneur is trying to do the same thing, but inside of sort of a corporation, okay? To dumb it down as quickly as possible, that's effectively what it is. So if you work in a big company like myself, and you want to get an idea out there, get a solution into the market, or solve a problem, and you want to kind of come up with something new, we call those people intrapreneurs inside our organization. So rather than go through and talk about all the different templates or tools or things that I could teach you about how to be an intrapreneur, I thought you can just go Google those things nowadays. You can YouTube them and watch a video on the business model canvas and whatever. There's so many templates out there. Like, I don't even care. Like, you guys can go do your own research on that stuff if you want to. What I thought would be more interesting is just talking about some of the mindsets, because I think those are the things that get learned with experience, and you can't always naturally kind of teach those in a way, so I feel like I could just kind of talk to you guys more about that today. And so the two, and another reason why that's so important is that from a mindset of being an entrepreneur, I don't care if you're the greatest whiz kid coder or you think you were the greatest thing since sliced bread and your parents told you how amazing you were, if you don't have the right mindset, you're dead, right? If you want to be an intrapreneur, you're effectively dead. So, outside of the two main sort of obvious mindsets, passion and desire, if you have no passion or no desire to be an intrapreneur inside your own organization, then again, it's not probably for you. But if you have any sort of desire to solve customer problems, try to get ideas implemented inside your organization, what I'll talk about next is more around the mindsets that are required to keep you, being successful. So, first thing I want to put up here is your journey will be an emotional one. And that is to say that normally it sort of starts off as like, hey, I have this really great idea. This is going to be fantastic. I'm going to solve this problem in my organization. And when you start working with someone like me, being a coach in our company too, it immediately starts going down. And I have to be sensitive to that because most people don't, when you first meet me, I don't want to like bust your bubble and sort of say, look, you have a long road ahead of you. This is not going to be easy. I'm going to, beat you up for the first couple months. But you also start learning how much you don't know about the subject. Do you really understand the problem that you're trying to solve? So anyway, the first thing I would say is recognize that it's an emotional journey. And the second thing I'll say here is that most of the people, when you're on your journey of sort of trying to get an idea implemented, they don't see all the hard work that goes behind it, right? You may talk to a colleague from time to time and you say, hey, I'm trying to get this idea implemented. And then you check back in like a month later and you've been grinding behind the scenes. And then they come back up and they go, so where are you with that idea? Oh, you haven't moved anywhere? Well, you kind of feel a little bit like, oh, you don't realize all the hard work that I'm trying to do to get this idea implemented. So, and it's not their fault unless you're kind of keeping them up to date with what you're doing, they just don't see it. So it's going to be an emotional one, but hopefully if you do get something implemented, it is a great satisfaction. So the next thing I'll say is get comfortable with being uncomfortable. I have been uncomfortable for like the last 10 years of my life in this space because it's just such a wild ride if you're an intrapreneur and also an entrepreneur, which I am on the side. So, I think both are sucky if you actually want my honest opinion on it, being an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur. I will say that being an intrapreneur is actually slightly easier. If I have my own money and I'm kind of failing and using my own money on my own time, that really hurts my pocketbook. The good news is if I do it with Cisco's money, that doesn't hurt me so much, right? Although it's really weird if I start spending like, $50,000 of someone else's money, and I'm like, oh my God, that's like $50,000. Like anyway, but so it is slightly easier from an intrapreneur perspective. So if let's say it this way, if you want to start going and thinking about being an entrepreneur, try it in your own company first. You'll learn a whole lot first. I mean, there's different challenges, but you can kind of get away with some of the things there and then maybe translate those to being an entrepreneur. So yeah, definitely feeling uncomfortable. We purposely design all of our trainings and all of our workshops to make people feel uncomfortable. Like I design my workshops to make them feel uncomfortable. I give them unrealistic timelines. Go complete this task in 5 minutes. I can't do it in 5 minutes. I know. But I need to give you an artificial timeline for you to move forward on this. We don't have time for analysis paralysis. So I purposely give unrealistic timelines. I force people to go talk to customers, and you'd be surprised. We love to talk, but when it comes to talking to customers, it's like nobody wants to do it. They're all afraid to go do it. So I force people to go out there and talk to our customers. And so, yeah. My entire thing is making people uncomfortable. So I also start with a slide like this. I say, look, if you're going to be working with me and you're going to attend a workshop or you're going to attend a training, it's going to feel uncomfortable. Even the trainings, we literally force them to leave the room and they have to go into the cafeteria and even talk to fellow Cisco people. People are like nervous. They start having like sweaty hands and like, you mean we really have to go like talk to other people and ask them questions? It's like, yes, because you should be doing that. That should be part of your job. So get comfortable with being uncomfortable. I'm just going to load this slide real quick. So we call this our B slide. Be bold, be fast, be lean, be agile. When we say be bold, we mean think 10x, think 100x, right? This is your opportunity, especially in the early phases of if you're thinking of ideas. Think big, right? Because inevitably your manager, your boss, or whoever is going to scale that idea down. They just naturally are. And it's really easy to scale something down rather than starting with something small and having to find ways to go and then to make it bigger. So we always tell them be bold, go really big, and we'll bring it down as the sort of the customer and the business side comes together. The next one is be fast. As I mentioned, we give artificial timelines for certain things. So, we'll tell people to, do something in an hour when realistically it's probably going to take them a month to do. But again, that's the whole purpose of it, is because we want to try to give them those boundaries to make them move quicker. In a big organization like Cisco, it's very, very difficult to move our people refer to a lot of these big companies like aircraft carriers, right? It's like, in order to move whatever, 3 degrees to the left. It takes like 45 minutes to do that with these big aircraft carriers. It's not so dissimilar to a company like Cisco. If you want something done, it takes a lot of time, so we try as hard as we can to get them to do it in a very quick way. Next one is be lean. Same thing if you're thinking about a budget or resource perspective. We give them, $100. I'll give a product manager $100 and I'll say, hey, go build me this product for $100. They go, Dad, you're funny, Nick. I can't do that for $100. I say, exactly. I don't want you to build the product. I want you to build something that represents what looks like the product. Go validate that, and when you've done that and you have enough evidence to prove to me, I'll release the next set of funds for you, okay? So the last one I'll say on this slide is the be agile one. I promise you from a business model perspective that every idea that you come up with will effectively change. Your business model will change. You're thinking, oh, that's great, I have this amazing SaaS solution that I'm thinking of, and we're gonna run it, use our channel partners to roll this thing out, blah, blah, blah. It's never gonna be that way. So don't get married to one process, one product, one feature, whatever it might be. You're gonna have to be agile in your thinking. So this is our B slide. Next thing from a mindset perspective is we wanna talk to them about breaking glass. And what I mean by breaking glass is it's okay to break glass. And by that means break some rules, okay? So the only thing we sort of ask is that you do 3 things, right? So 1, be aware that you've broken the glass. Don't just go around breaking glass for no reason, which leads me to the second point, which is you have to be able to justify the reason. So I have no problem you sort of disobeying a certain rule, sort of like an internal written rule, as long as you can justify the reason. And number 3, if you can clean it up yourself, or you can get your manager to clean up whatever damage you've done, whatever rule you've broken, I'm cool with it. Doesn't matter to me. I'll share a quick example of, we were running a workshop one time, and one of our project teams called up a CIO of a service provider and pitched an idea to them. And the service provider said, this is fantastic. When is it available? I want to buy it. And she said, the woman said, let me talk to your SVP. I want to know more details. Okay, so that means we had to go now talk to our SVP, and the SVP said, you pitched an idea to a CIO for one of the largest service providers, and now you want to buy it and we don't have it? Yeah, and we were like, yeah, but the good news is they want to buy it. And so, yeah, on the fly, right then and there, we had to get a couple directors on the phone. Like 3 hours later, we got the SVP on the line, and they ended up talking to him. So we kind of walked him down a little bit, and we said, look, sorry, it's not technically there yet. We're just trying to gauge if this is something you'd be interested in. So we walked it down, and we were able to walk it back out. But ultimately, they decided not to go forward with it. But the point is, we did something. We broke some glass. We went straight to a CIO, which we had no business doing. But again, strategic disobedience here. But we got some good value out of it. They actually told us some good things, and we had pivoted and went a different direction. But anyway, if you can break some glass, I'm all for it as an entrepreneur. Next thing, I'm sure, do we have any, I don't know if there's any true product managers here in the room or have worked with. I'm sure every single one of us has worked with a product manager. But I will tell you that 99% of every idea that you think is good, the first idea that you come up with will not be the idea that gets implemented. I promise you. I've never seen the smartest engineer in the world will come to me and go, Nick, I have the greatest idea ever, and it's going to work just like this. And I said, no, it's not. Maybe technically it's going to work like that, but again, from a business perspective or what the customer wants, it's not going to be that way. So this is kind of an obvious one, but you guys have probably heard this 1,000 times because it's true. And you have to fall in love with the problem that you're trying to solve and not the solution. And we purposely design all of our trainings, all of our workshops to actually reinforce this. And what do I mean by that? So most of the 2-day workshops that I run, I would say 80% of the 2 days is spent in what we call our discover and define phase. And only a couple hours of a 2-day workshop is on the ideation, because that's just not important to me. The idea itself is not necessarily important. It's the discovery work that we do and how we define the problem. So, and it's not just sort of me who says this. There's a really smart guy, Albert Einstein. He said, if I had an hour to save the world, I'd spend 55 minutes defining the problem and only 5 minutes on the solution. So It's not just Nick. It's not just Cisco. There's smart guys out there too who also say the same thing. But again, it's kind of an obvious one. You guys should know this, but fall in love with the problem, not the solution. You've probably seen this one too. Said it 1,000 times. Fail fast. Gotta fail fast. Gotta fail fast. Yes, you do have to fail fast. However, if I came to my manager and I was like, hey, Mathilde, good news. We just lost $2 million yesterday. And she'd be like, what's the good news? I'm like, yeah, but I did it fast. I lost it in one day. I lost $2 million in one day. I don't think she'd be so happy with me, right? So like, it's not just fail fast, fail cheap. And then the third thing here is don't make the same mistake twice, right? Like, I cannot walk in the next day and then keep saying I lost $2 million a day. I'll be out of a job very, very quickly at that point. So fail fast, fail cheap, and learn from your failures and pivot. The next one here is don't kid yourself. This is not for the faint of heart. There's a ton of work that goes into this. There's a ton of practice. I know people say practice makes perfect, but no, it doesn't. Not in the innovation space. I don't care how much you practice, you're not going to get it perfect. So don't even try. It's just not something that you should have the right mindset to think that practice makes perfect in this sense. You're just going to get better. That's all it's going to be. You're just going to get better at it. And I think that there's something that is really interesting about the practice thing is that a lot of times I work with people and they're like, Nick, I don't think I'm really that innovative or I'm not that creative. And I say, well, what do you do to help you be more innovative or be creative on a daily basis? I don't know. I don't really do anything. I sort of like start my day off in the morning and I end my day off in the same place. And I said, well, yeah, if you're going to start your day the same way every time, how do you think you're going to get to a different destination at the end? You think you're just magically going to, become some kind of like creativity wizard or something? Just someone's going to like anoint you? No, it doesn't happen that way. You have to practice. You have to train. So I tell people, okay, the first thing you want to do, if you want to be like an innovator or an idea guy or gal, whatever it might be, start with writing 10 ideas every day. Keep a list. Write 10 ideas. When you come across a problem, write 10 ideas every single day. And when you can start doing that and it becomes second nature for you, when you start looking at problems and you're like, okay, well, we could do that differently if we did like this, like this, like this, then you start really you're building that muscle memory of coming up with ideas over and over and over again. And this is just a game of, I said this yesterday in the talk, is like, I'm not worried about my batting average either. Like, I don't care if I fail at 99, but if I got the 1, I'm good. Because usually the 1 is big enough to take care of all the 99 that didn't work. So I may work with teams and I may work with about, probably on average about 50 different teams working on different projects. And I know sure as hell that like 47 of those are going to fail, but 3 of those are going to give me like $100 million a year. I'm good. I don't really care, right? So again, it's going to take practice. Find ways in your own daily routine to start thinking about ways to come up with ideas and look at problems differently. So it will take practice. Have that mindset. The next one, this is just an obvious one. Your customers are always right. Don't try to kid yourself and say, I know what my customers want, because it's impossible. You don't know what your customers want. Your customers are always right. Listen to them, okay? And the good news is if you do create them, if you do follow what your customers say and you co-create with them, well, guess what? And by the way, when I say customers, I don't just mean like end customers, right? We have internal customers as well. So if you're working on a business process, right? You have key stakeholders. Those are your customers, right? Pretty obvious, right? But if you co-create something with them, you no longer then have to sell it to them when you're done with it. Because they're already bought in. They've told you what you wanted. You've already created the pipeline. You've already created the demand. This is no longer like, oh, now I have to go pitch something back to my customers. They should be already telling you, I'm ready to buy this thing right now. And it shouldn't have, most of the time it shouldn't be built yet. But they should be telling you, yes, I'll buy this right now. So, your customers are always right. Your customers are not always right. In the very rare instances, I will say that there is a difference between what I call, a market pull and a tech push, okay? So yes, most of the time, 99% of the time, you should be listening to what your customers are saying, pull that into the organization, co-create with them, and push something back out. Now, from a technology standpoint, I'll give you a good example of what I mean by tech push. I did a bunch of work before, so I worked at Cisco, left for 2 years, now I'm back at Cisco. But during my 2 years while I was gone, I was living in Switzerland for 2 years. And I worked with, well, I won't say the company name, the largest breast pump manufacturer in the world. And they're based, you can probably figure it out now, but if you figured that out, there's pretty much only one. So anyway, I was working with them, and if we were doing customer empathy interviews and we were talking to moms and things, and if I had walked up to a mother and I said, you know, how can we double the extraction of milk out of your breast, okay? What's the likelihood that sorry, but like, what's the likelihood they're gonna be like, I got the perfect example. We need like a reverse pump thing that does this, this, and this, and this, and be like, oh my God, thank you so much. That was so amazing, right? Like, that's not gonna happen, right? I mean, that would be great if there was. There's, you know, I'm sure if I found the one scientist who understands mechanical engineering, the way of human anatomy works and things like that, then okay, great. I might have found the one lucky person that I interviewed. But the reality is, there are some problems that only specialists can solve for, and you need your hardcore classic R&D to go do those things, okay? Now, you take that tech that you've created and you supplement that into what you're hearing from the market, and then you push that back out. So this is sort of like my unscientific kind of like proportion here, but I would say like 80% of the what the customer is telling you should be wrapped in with an additional 20% of what your hardcore R&D teams are working on that the customer doesn't really actually know that they really need or doesn't know how to articulate that, and supplement that from what you're hearing from the market, and then you can kind of push that out. So another good example of this is you've probably heard that famous Henry Ford quote where he said, you know, if I'd asked my customers what they would have wanted, they would have said a faster horse, right? I'm sure we've all heard that one. Well, yes, he was still listening to his customers, but what he was actually doing was just reframing the problem slightly, and all he was really in his mind was thinking was, how can I make a faster mode of transportation? Okay, so that's where you can kind of get that shift a little bit, but statistically, and I will tell you this, the customers are always right. It's just in very few instances use the ability of a hardcore R&D tech push through to supplement that the customers are always right. Paper airplanes, have a paper airplane mindset. No, that is not. So one of the activities that we do to get people to think differently from what's being said and how you perceive it is we call it our paper airplane activity. And all it is we give each team, so if we're working in a workshop, we give each team 10 sheets of paper. And we say, and I'll literally like put a line on the floor or a piece of tape like on one side, and then I'll put another piece of tape, you know, somewhere over here like this, and I'll say, okay, teams, you have 10 sheets of paper, get as many planes over the line as possible in 5 minutes, okay? And so what every team does is they run over to the table and they're like trying to make the freaking paper airplane, and then all the teams are so proud, and you know, they always care about one thing, right? It's like, how far did it go? And they all start cheering, like, I went so far. It's like, great, that's not really the purpose, but congratulations, your plane went further than the other team. But the point of this is, would you be surprised if I told you that the most planes I've seen over the line was 347? Probably thinking to yourself, how did that happen? Well, it was a bunch of 7th graders. So I did this same activity with a bunch of 7th graders, and in the last minute, one of the kids was like, let's just rip a bunch of pieces of paper in small little balls, put it in like a bigger ball, and then we're just gonna throw it over the line. And I was super shocked by that because that was exactly what I'm looking for, right? So all I said was the team with the most number of planes over the line wins. We don't give them any other instructions besides that, right? So we don't tell them what it has to look like. We don't tell them how far it has to go, just has to cross the line. And that was the winning number that the most I've ever seen up until 2 weeks ago. I was in Krakow in Poland, and this wicked smart engineer, it was really hilarious. He went over and he grabbed a pen, and on one of the pieces of paper, he wrote an infinite number of planes and then chucked it over the line. And I didn't recognize what had happened, and so we were thrown over, and I do my usual, okay, this team's got like 4, this team's got 10, congratulations. And he goes, hey, Nick, check out that one over there. And I was like, okay. So I look at it, and I was like, ooh, all right, you win. So anyway, next time you see that activity, or if you do that, now you know how to win every single time. Just infinite number of planes. Write it on there. Anyway, that's just to say, challenge what you're hearing, because in the world today, I think we hear things, but we don't challenge that enough. And so, yeah, just kind of saying that one. Before I move to the next slide, how many people think we have created a time machine? Raise your hand. Now, actually, before you raise your hand, I will call on you and ask you what that time machine is. But how many people think in this room that we've created a time machine? Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'll go for you in the middle in the back, right? This line right here? Yep, you. In your opinion, what's the time machine that we created? An airplane going from Utah to Florida, like jumping time zone? Okay, that's pretty clever. I can only do one. Well, actually, I'll take another one. Why not? We got time. Go for it. Over here. The internet time machine. Okay, interesting. Okay, that's a good one. Anybody know what this is? This is the we got movies and phonographs. What's a phonograph? That's actually a serious question. I actually don't know what a phonograph is, but sorry. Movies and phonographs. You're looking at me. Audio recordings. Oh, okay. Oh, God, sorry. And you put on this conference. I feel bad that I had to anyway, this is the James Webb telescope. Okay, it's launching in 2021. This will allow us to look backwards 100 million years. So effectively, the biggest and best time machine effectively that we will have ever created so far to date. So again, only the reason why I bring this up is because you can challenge, thank you for the flight, that's kind of an interesting one, the internet, in terms of sort of having a time machine. But again, challenging what you're hearing and how you sort of perceive that. The next thing I want to talk to you guys about is the mindset of storytelling. And you guys all know this, how valuable that really is. But we pride ourselves on giving every team that we work with pitch practice and storytelling skills, because the innovation itself is just the art of sort of getting your idea across and getting people bought into that so that you can actually get something implemented. For us, if you can try to pitch your idea as many times as possible, that's the best thing. That's the most important thing that we can ask for you guys to do is we will literally leave the room and just go tell as many people who are willing to listen to you as possible your idea, because they'll look at you and they'll give you feedback. They'll tell you that doesn't make any sense, I don't understand it, whatever it is, but you're getting ears and eyes on the ideas that you have, and telling it in a really clever storytelling way is the best way, not just like facts. So I'll get super technical here for a second, but anybody know what the Savior War hypothesis is? Anybody seen the movie Arrival with Amy Adams? So again, just super kind of technical here for a second, but the hypothesis is that depending on the language that you actually speak, you perceive the world in a different way. So English, German, whatever it may be, French, Turkish, you actually, because of the words that you use, you actually perceive the world in a different way. So I'll give you a good example of this. It's kind of the classic one that they always say, but Eskimos, I think a lot of us know this, but they have like 40 different words for snow, right? So it's just because, so imagine them telling a story, and they'll use those words, but literally we will have no other equivalent word for that, so they perceive the world, because we have like 3, right? Like, I don't know, sleet, heavy snow, light snow, I don't know, whatever. But because they have a totally different language, they perceive the world in a totally different way, and so they're able to tell the story in a completely different way. So just the power of storytelling is, I would say, one of the most important things that we try to teach, and we actually give, again, like I said, we give everybody pitch coaching. It's also the reason why you see all these stupid pitch shows now. We have like Dragon's Den and Shark Tank, and it seems like every week there's like a new one popping up, because it's so powerful, telling a story. Oh, me and my co-founder did this and this and this, and you're telling a story and you're trying to get your idea pitched. Even better with storytelling is visuals. So yes, words are great, but the visuals are 10 times better, right? If you can tell your story with some sort of visual, which is what we do all the time, we actually force the teams to leave the room with 6 Post-its. And we call it our storyboarding concept. And we just tell them, go leave the room with 6 Post-its, and you have to tell your story under 3 minutes. And so because the forcing them to put it in a visual format also forces them to add more color and detail to their idea. And then, of course, like 65% of us, I don't know if that's a hard number or not, but I read it somewhere, that 65% of us are visual learners, right? So most of us will probably not even hear what you're saying from an audio perspective, just like you're probably not paying attention to me, and you're probably paying attention to the slides, because we're just visual learners. Most of us are visual learners. That's what they see, okay? I want to do a quick activity with you guys. It's always a fun one that we do in our workshops. But this is my brilliant idea that I just came up with. Take 10 seconds, and you can blurt it out if you want to, or say it, think of them to yourself. Give me all the reasons why this is an absolutely horrible idea. Safety, drag, engineer. What's that? Survival, yeah, it's a good chance you're gonna die. It's too cold, yeah, it's freezing out there, yeah. Okay, thanks for humoring me. Oh, what's that? Access to the washrooms, yes. That'll be well, although that could be just, let it go. Okay, that's funny. Okay, so now take a few seconds and tell me all the reasons why this actually could be a good idea. What? Great view. More room? Stretch your legs. Cheap? Okay, it could be cheap. No, no line up to the washroom. You can let it go. A lot of people, like, when we've done this, they say, like, oh, like, we could maybe sell it as like an adventure seeker seat or something like that, right? And the reason why we do this is just to sort of expand everyone's thinking, like, we know this is a stupid idea, like, come on, I'm not really gonna do that. But if you indulge yourself and try to think of a way where you could say, well, how actually could we do this, right? So what if we put cameras on the wings, and we had like a VR headset at your seat where you were sort of piping in the feed into your like headset while you're sitting. You could make it kind of feel like you were on the wing, potentially, right? So all we're trying to say here is that, like, there's 2 different sort of these like mindsets here around open and closed thinking, and they both work really well, right? So it's not like closed mindset is not good and open mindset is the only mindset to have. But the open mindset is also referred to as like the divergent thinking, right? I'm sure you've heard of that a million times, you know, go big, go wide. And then we have the closed mindset, which is when we really need to focus, we really need, we have 5 minutes to come up with to pick one idea, so let's go ahead and get in that closed mindset. You'll also, maybe you've heard of the open mindset for the yes and. If you ever played that game where like somebody says something and then you go like yes and, yes and, yes and you build on that. Then you also do the no because. So anyway, so yes and, no because. So the open and closed mindsets are something that we do a lot. We actually, for this activity, we do, we tell them that they get to plan a party. So we say, yeah, we have unlimited budget. So Chuck, our CEO, has given you unlimited budget to plan our company party. And then we split them up in 2 teams, and we say, person A starts off with the idea, and person B has to start off every sentence with no because. And it's quite interesting because what ends up happening is when we ask, how did that person feel who has to come up with and say the no because, you actually, it's really difficult, to, especially if you like the person and it's actually a good idea, you actually have to come up with ways to say no. And I'm telling you right now, I don't know how many times I've had my manager literally make up reasons to tell me no. And I'm sure you've all felt the same way. They literally will make up reasons just to say no. And because they're in a closed mindset. Okay, speaking of planes and airplanes, don't go at it alone. Find a co-pilot. In fact, find as many co-pilots as you can if you're trying to get ideas across the line. Why? Talked a little bit about this yesterday in the panel around diversity and inclusion. If you think you have all the ideas, you probably wouldn't be here. You'd probably be sitting on some yacht, like drinking champagne or whatever, right? You need diversity of thought, you need diversity, you need inclusion, and the more people you have on your team, the more likely that you won't have missed something. And what I mean by that is, especially at Cisco, right, we have obviously people in like 150 or actually like 180 different countries, but if a team in the United States is working on an idea and they don't involve someone in, let's say, APJ, there are policy things, there's like cultural things that will just never work from one section to the other. So we always tell people, you better go get somebody, if you're thinking of solving a global problem, you better go get a global team. Don't think that whatever, every Asian culture or policy that are out there. You just don't, right? So it's kind of an obvious one, but find as many co-pilots as possible. Also, the reason why this is super helpful is now you have 5 or 7 more people who are also pitching your idea, who are also getting more buy-in for you. So rather than you going around trying to go convince everybody, you have 7x the capacity now to go out there and pitch your idea to as many VPs as possible. Okay, so on the same vein of the creativity, who are some of the most creative people we know? Feel free to blurt some out. Who are the most creative people we know? When you think of creative people, who are those kinds of people? Children. Some of you guys know my slides, or okay. I hear things like artists, musicians, chefs, whatever. Yes, kids, children. What makes children so amazing at being creative? Imagination, I heard. No influences. No boundaries. Yeah, I mean they are born. They're born creative. They just have that mindset. Totally quick side note here. When I first started making, I think you say decent money in New York City, it's like absolutely living on rice and beans. But I went to my niece is actually just north of here in St. Augustine, Florida. And I was super excited. I was like, oh man, I'm finally making money. And so I'll buy her a gift. And I was super excited. I was jacked up. I was came down to visit for her birthday. And I got her this gift and I put it in front of her. And she unwrapped it and she didn't even play with the gift. She went in the box. And, I was a little disappointed at first. But, I started understanding that for her, she doesn't understand the gift that I got. But the box though was awesome. Because the box could be anything. Box could be a ship, could be a car, could be a boat, whatever. It could be motorcycle. It doesn't matter what it is, right? So kids are just naturally creative. And again, another quick side note. As she grew older, now she's 10, I went and saw her last year. And I was like, so Kaylee, what's the best gift you've ever gotten? And she goes, the one you're going to buy me tomorrow. I was like, damn, that is so good. It's if I thought for 20 minutes, I don't even think I could have come up with a better answer than that. I was like, oh, you're going to be a devil for somebody. I was like, someone else's problem. Okay, so on the mindsets thing, I'll just say this really quickly, that no matter what you do at this point, you could try as hard as you want. You could have all the right mindsets, but you got to stay. You gotta stay persistent. Someone's gonna try to kill your idea, whether that's your manager, the company itself, that so-called colleague who's jealous of you, whatever it might be, right? So you're gonna it's gonna feel like this a lot. So we kind of moved on. We touched on a lot of the entrepreneurial kind of mindsets and things to be aware of. I'll talk a little bit now about the programs and tools. I'll run through this one a little quick because we're at 14 minutes or so, but less time for questions. So look, if you want to actually make this work inside your organization, you have to put the processes and tools in your organization. If you have all these really excited people who want to be entrepreneurs, but then you don't give them the avenue to do that, they're going to leave your company. Straight up. They're either going to go build their own company, or they're going to go work for a company that will listen to their ideas. Simple as that. It's a very simple game, okay? So what we decided to do was we took a hard look at what do we think of when we think of innovation at Cisco? And you can imagine, being the giant company that we have, there's really not like one thing that we can do. So we have a 5-pillar innovation strategy. Now, our team rolls up under the build phase, so it's our job to sort of more or less disrupt the company itself, right? Rather than going and buying XYZ company for $2 billion. If we had just freaking did it ourselves, we would have saved ourselves $2 billion, right? So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to save us from going and spending massive amounts of money buying and acquiring different companies. All that's still a great strategy. I'm not discounting that. But my job is to try to, for us to come up with that idea and get that idea funded internally. So I'm part of our, what we call our build pillar. So I won't go into detail of all these, but buy, classic buy, partner, Apple, Ericsson, Sony, we have a bunch of those types of partnerships. Invest, we have a investment arm that invests in, we do invest in some startups, but mostly in what you're seeing here in that invest phase is only after Series C and after. There's a whole lot of legal reasons why, but from a fiduciary standpoint, we only invest in C and after that. And then we have our, for co-develop, we have our innovation centers located all around the world. So we have 14 of them, I believe. None in North America, because we sort of say like, well, that's just sort of like our headquarters. But we have we have 14 different sort of innovation centers. They're like our outposts all around the world, like Israel, Barcelona, Australia, Dubai, Turkey, anywhere, right? So again, specifically about the build pillar, our team, let's say our broader team, rolls up under one, what we call My Innovation Program, okay? Again, we're employee focused, right? So we roll up under what we call our My Innovation Program. And that started, as I said, about 5 years ago. We did what any sort of good design thinkers would go out and do, and we did our research. We talked to our employees, we talked to senior leadership, we talked to HR, we talked to finance, we talked to everybody that we could to say, what is it that we're missing? What do we need to build? So, came up with a bunch of programs. We had about probably 10 at one point. There's 3 or 4 that are left. So a lot of them didn't work. We just cut bait, let them die. They just weren't working. But some of them did work really well. And so we have some great numbers. Again, we won some awards for this stuff. I'll just kind of move past that. But I want to talk about 2 in particular. So one is that's called our Innovate Everywhere Challenge. So it's our once-a-year challenge that's sponsored by our CEO, and effectively he makes a call for all our big ideas. So for those of you, again, who were in the session yesterday, we don't just ask for any idea though, right? This isn't just like, we need better, whatever, paper towels or whatever, right? It's got to be something valuable, okay? And so we do it once a year. There's a bunch of prizes and stuff around it, but I'll give you a quick visibility into how this looks like from a process perspective. Super busy slide, just pay attention to the top line. We allow for 6 weeks of ideation, and then there's multiple rounds of sort of reviewing and evaluating all the ideas. We bring in subject matter experts. By the way, we get between 400 and 500 ideas every year. So it's quite a lot that we have to manage, but we built a good community of people to help us kind of weed through the ideas, find the good ones. We take our top 20, so we take the top 20 teams, and each team usually consists of, 5 to 7 people, something like that, and we fly them all to San Jose in January. So we just finished our 5th submission period. It just ended 2 weeks ago. So we take the top 20 teams, fly them all to San Jose, all around the world, and then I get them for 3 days, and I kick the crap out of them for 3 days, effectively. I try to kill their idea before someone else kills it. So, I'm like the friendly uncle who tries to, beat you around or whatever, but they do it out of love. I figure if I can kill your idea, I'm not technical and I'm not a designer, even though literally I work at a tech company and I'm the head of design thinking. I can't draw and I'm not technical, so that should already tell you something. Either I can't do my job or it doesn't matter. Those skills are not useful for me. So the thing that I do during the 3 days is I go through design thinking, so I teach them empathy. We make sure that they're solving a good problem, and then we teach them a lot of lean startup skills. We don't teach them agile software development, but we do teach them some sort of agile mindsets, okay? And if you guys don't know anything about Lean Startup, I'd go recommend you just go buy that book, Lean Startup by Eric Ries. It's a good book. And then we pick some winners. There's like the whole dog and pony show, and we do this whole thing, and we select 3 winners. Each team gets $25,000 cash. So that's after taxes too. So we pay the taxes for them. Each team gets $25,000 cash, and then they get an additional $25,000 to actually spend however they want to help move their idea forward. So if that means I'm going to stop working on this, I'm going to backfill my role with a red badge. A red badge is like a contractor. So you have blue badges and red badge. Blue badge full-time, red badge contractor. We would just say, okay, well, you can backfill your role with the money, the $25K that you have, and if that works, that works. If you make more than that, then congratulations, you make a lot of money per month. And so great, fine, whatever that is, right? So we give them that opportunity, do whatever you can with 25 grand. We give them 3 months to spend that money, so they have to spend $25,000 in that quarter, or it's use it or lose it. Because the way our budgeting works, it's kind of complicated, but you have to spend the money in the quarter, okay? So again, as I mentioned around the not just any idea, we do give them what we call our strategic table of kind of elements, if you will, around innovation. So these are the markets we want to play in, these are the technologies we want to use, and these are the business models that we're interested in. And so what we ask them to do is say, okay, look, try to mash up 2 or 3 of these and see if you can come up with something that would be relevant or useful for us. So we do give them this as a framework, so they're not just ideating about whatever, useless stuff like refrigerators or cars that are not useful for us at being an IT company. So we give them some guidance. The next thing I'll say is quickly about our program itself, or one of the ones that I run, because I run multiple, but is just design thinking itself. Look, if you guys know design thinking, which maybe a lot of you already know, there were already maybe some sessions this week about it. We have our own framework. It's effectively the same thing. We just changed up a few things you can imagine. Again, if you take any methodology, BCG, whatever, McKinsey comes in here and tells you, hey, you need to adopt this methodology, you're always going to get pushback, right? It doesn't work. There's not one methodology that works for every single company. So what we did is we took a look at it and said, okay, from a design thinking standpoint, how can we put a Cisco version to it? And this is what you see here. So discover, define, and then explore. Again, it's just what it looks like. The main thing that we try to preach, though, is I don't really care if we can do something. Not what I'm interested in. I'm interested, should we do it? So we have a lot of wicked smart engineers that like to, put this cloud service and this IoT device and do something just because they can. They're engineers. They like to do things, like to tinker. I don't really care. If there's no business viability and no customer's going to buy it, it's irrelevant. Go start your own startup, whatever. But it's not relevant to me. If I can't make a business out of it and no customer wants to buy it, great. Even if customers want to buy it, people forget this one all the time. It has to be good from a business standpoint, right? Which is why I keep saying, your business models, when you come up with ideas, you're going to be churning out 30, 50 different versions of your business model in order for it to be kind of approved and a go-to-market strategy for Cisco to want to do it. We give them a lot of resources. We have this book, whatever. So we made a book. We have a lab. So this is actually in San Jose. It's on the 2nd floor of our executive briefing center in our headquarters. So Chuck is 1 floor above us. And the last thing I'll sort of touch on here is just a quick story. I live in Charleston, South Carolina, right up the road. And back in 2016, hurricane rolled through, and I got a phone call. And I was like, hi, this is Nick. And they said, hi, this is Cisco Emergency Services. I just want to check to see that if you guys are okay. I said, totally fine. Grew up here in South Florida, used to hurricanes. Wife is German. She was freaking out, but we had our mandatory evacuation. I'm like, I'm staying. I've been through enough of these, so I'm staying. And the interesting part about this is they said, okay, just so you know, if you need us, we have a helicopter on standby to evacuate you and your family. So think about all the things that have to go right for a company to be willing to, A, do that, which I was blown away by. Little old me, I work from home in the middle of even a smaller city. I live in Charleston, but I live in another outskirt part. And they literally had the infrastructure to make me feel that safe where they were calling me ahead of the hurricane coming, telling me that they would evacuate me and my family. So anyway, just from a company standpoint, you have to make sure your companies feel like they're valued and that you care for them. Okay, so just a kind of a story there. And again, another little boxing reference for you. Not a boxer, but they kind of carry over quite well. I'll say that Mike Tyson famously said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. All right? So what do I mean by that? If you're an employee, doesn't matter what you do, sometimes you just run up against a wall that you just get punched in the face and you can't, just can't get past it, right? Same with if you're a manager. Look, if we hired a new CFO tomorrow or a new CEO came in and said, sorry, we don't care about innovation. It's a race to the bottom line. It's a commodities market. That's what we want to play in. And we don't care about innovation. Race to the bottom. We're going to play that game. Cool. Well, then I guess I'm out of a job. So it doesn't matter, you can do all the right things, but in the end, you can have all the plan, but in the end, effectively, if you get hit with one of those faces, you either have to leave a different company. I know a lot of people, if you're in this space, you got to have guts. I know so many different program managers that have been let go because you pretty much have a 3-year window, or if you don't show value in 3 years, you're out. So, do what you can. The last thing I'll say is people always ask me, why do you work at Cisco? And I say, well, I'd like to leave the world in a better place than where I found it. And if I can help one of the, let's say, largest IT companies in the world solve their toughest problems to help support other businesses trying to do good, that's good enough for me. So with that, I'm kind of done. And I did leave a few minutes for questions if you guys have any, but that's it.